Welcome to Weekly Briefing. I'm Chanel Rion. To say Joe Biden isn't a closet white supremacist is like denying that the Democratic Party founded the Ku Klux Klan. He is, and they did. They can try to rewrite history all they want. It's not going to change their roots. These ugly facts are brought to light because this week, Joe Biden capitalized, as self-righteous psychopaths do, on a nightmare tragedy in Buffalo, New York. A mental patient marched into a grocery store, targeted and murdered in cold blood 10 innocent people before being taken into custody. The 18-year-old lunatic left a manifesto professing his bizarre adulation for National Socialism, anti-Semitism, guns, and a hatred for anyone who wasn't a white European or East Asian.
A hate that through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced, that's the word, replaced, by the other.
Radicalized, angry, alienated, lost. Joe, are you talking about yourself? If you did keel over, Kamala actually would replace you. In all seriousness, Biden's visit to Buffalo was a disgusting joke. How sad that it was. These are real families grieving over mothers and fathers and grandparents and friends. Yet Biden and his handlers chose to make this a political finger-wagging. If Bumbo Biden was serious about addressing racially fueled domestic terrorism, he would have visited Waukesha, Wisconsin, or the New York City subway attack, or the Dallas Koreatown, where a man with a delusional hatred of Asians opened fire on random Korean women because he hated Asians, or the Chinese attack on a Taiwanese church in California. Why didn't Biden visit these racially motivated acts of domestic terrorism?
Obviously, any president going to visit a community requires a lot of assets, requires taking their resources.
Biden doesn't care if these are racially motivated attacks. He's capitalizing on the African American community as a means to create a more European America, one in which guns reside exclusively in the hands of the government.
We can keep assault weapons off our streets. We've done it before. I did it when we passed the crime bill last time.
Biden's crime bill. That brings us to my initial point, that Biden's inner racism has been hiding in plain sight for decades. Biden's crime bill of '94 has helped incarcerate enough black men to make the Democrats' KKK proud. Biden was never about supporting or helping the black community. He used them to build a self-serving political career 5 decades filthy. Let's start from the beginning. In his first term as senator, Biden fought fiercely against desegregating schools and busing. It would force his children to, quote, grow up in a racial jungle, one that would get tense and explode in the clash. Racial jungle? Who uses that language? Explain it away all you want. Even Kamala Harris thought Biden was a racist monstrosity.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Or what about that moment in 2007 when Joe Biden thought he was complimenting Barack Obama?
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean.
Is Biden admitting he views African Americans as inarticulate, dull, and dirty? This man is disgusting. But it's nothing that should surprise you. After all, this is just a snippet of the inner white supremacist that occasionally escapes his teleprompter to reveal he views non-white races as inferior. Here's Biden wondering why Iowa school kids perform better than DC school kids.
Again, you have to start off with what they start off with. There's less than 1% of the population of Iowa that is African American. There is probably less than 4 or 5% of that is our minorities. What is in Washington?
I think it's a vast majority.
Yeah. So look, It goes back to what you start off with, what you're dealing with.
What about that time he spoke to the Asian and Latino coalition?
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
The media fell all over themselves to shield Biden, calling this pattern of behavior simple gaffes from the affable Uncle Joe, when really he's patting the black community on the head. That he and his party assume one race is born inherently and fundamentally at a lesser advantage than others is the very definition of racial supremacy.
The data shows young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are.
Here's the thing about gaffes. When they happen enough times, over and over, they tend to reveal something about the clown making the gaffe. Remember when Bill Cosby would joke on stage about drugging women? Gaffe Biden is Biden's most candid, unfiltered self.
What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
To the waspy Delaware huckster, all black people think alike. They don't have diverse views or attitudes, and if they do, they're not in fact black.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
In case you still don't buy into Biden's Freudian white supremacy slip-ups, here he is praising KKK leader and Democrat Senator Robert Byrd as his mentor.
He was fiercely devoted, as you've all heard, to his principles. Even once he became power, he always spoke truth to power, standing up for the people he proudly was part of.
Byrd stood up and he was proud, all right. Byrd's political career launched because he was a Klansman who organized 150 people to join the KKK in West Virginia and was unanimously nominated to be an exalted Cyclops. That's a top officer. This so impressed Democrat leadership, they encouraged Robert Byrd to go into politics where he would be counted by Joe Biden as a mentor. Never mind that Republican Senator Trent Lott of Mississippi was forced to resign from his Senate leadership spot because he praised Strom Thurmond, a segregationist senator from South Carolina. How, you might ask, has Joe Biden gotten away with all of this for so many years? Well, the ugly truth is that his bootlicking liberal media feel exactly the way he does. When they're not talking down to non-whites, feigning praise to make themselves feel magnanimous, they can be found ordering minorities to sit in the back and shut up, especially at the White House.
The biggest respect is not to have questions for 15 months. That's what I'm asking you. If you can spread the question from across the room, and all of us as a party will be able to have the question.
Not today.
Not today. That was an African reporter asking Press Secretary Psaki to spread her questions across the room. We'll speak to him later in the show. He was afterwards berated by that same white, elitist old boys press club that he wasn't being collegial and would be suspended if he displayed such brazen aggressiveness again. The same aggression once praised when it was against Donald Trump and committed by a white man.
If you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may
Okay,
ask one
that's
other question, Mr. President, if I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's
have had,
enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned
indictments?
about anything.
And Jim, that must have been a surreal experience. Obviously, you were being very aggressive, as is the job of a White House correspondent.
Racist double standards? Nonsense. We hired the first black gay woman to be our press secretary. No racism here. This is the ultimate racist superiority complex. It's wrong, it's ugly, and it's a disease that's infected the entire leftist agenda. They are the true racists in their presumptions and their low expectations and their radical agenda. Joe Biden's inner white supremacist has been the open secret his dementia let out of the closet. Now that he's president, it's only getting worse. Luckily, it's a fraud that exposes itself. And that's my opening statement. When we come back, we visit with filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. he exposes another kind of fraud, debunking the panicked fact-checkers trying to take down his film, 2,000 Mules. When we return.